Hello, everyone. I'm your sleep sinners for tonight, here to guide you into a peaceful and mysterious slumber. I know many of you use these videos to help you fall asleep. So before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, I'd love to know where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now. Go ahead, get comfortable, relax, and let the rain and stories take you away. Ruins of Persepolis, Iran. Chapter 1. The Chamber. Dr. Layla Rostami froze as her brush revealed the edge of what appeared to be metal. Not stone, not clay, but actual metal, embedded in the ancient floor of Persepolis. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she keyed her radio. Darius, get down here. Now! The archaeological site had fallen silent as the evening crew departed, leaving only Layla and her graduate assistant remaining in the newly discovered subterranean chamber. The fading sunset cast long shadows to the ruins above, barely reaching this deep underground sanctuary that hadn't seen light for over 2,500 years. Darius Farahani's footsteps echoed down the narrow passage before he appeared, his lanky frame ducking beneath the low doorway. His eyes widened as he spotted what had caught Layla's attention. "Is that?" he began. "Metal, perfectly preserved. And look at the pattern." Layla's voice trembled as she carefully brushed away more dust. "This isn't a chemonid. This isn't anything I've ever seen." The object was a perfect circle, about 30 centimeters in diameter, embedded flush with the stone floor. Its surface gleamed with an iridescent blue sheen that seemed to shift under their lights. Most shocking were the symbols etched around its circumference. Not the familiar cuneiform or old Persian script they expected, but something entirely different. It looks almost like... Darius hesitated to say it. "A hatch!" Layla finished his thought. "Or a seal." As the two archaeologists worked to clear the surrounding area, the true extent of their discovery emerged. The chamber itself was unusual, a perfect hexagon with walls of fitted stone, so precise not even a hair could fit between them. 6 columns arranged in a circle supported a domed ceiling decorated with astronomical symbols, many matching known constellations, others completely unfamiliar. But it was a floor that truly defied explanation. Concentric rings of text spiraled outward from the metal disc, written in not one but 3 distinct scripts. Familiar Old Persian cuneiform, hieroglyphic symbols reminiscent of but distinct from Egyptian, and a third script neither archaeologists recognized. Flowing symbols that seemed to shimmer slightly when viewed from different angles. "This can't be from the Achaemenid period," Darius muttered, snapping photos with shaking hands. "This technology, these materials, it's impossible." "Remember where we are," Layla replied, her voice hushed with reverence. "Persepolis, the richest city in the world when Alexander burned it to the ground, the ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire." She ran her fingers over the nearest glyph, feeling a slight vibration beneath her touch. "Get the translation software running," she instructed. "Start with the cuneiform." As Darius set up their equipment, Layla circled the chamber, examining the columns. Each was carved with relief figures, showing robed individuals performing what appeared to be ritual activities. But unlike the familiar Persepolis reliefs above ground, kings, nobles, and tribute bearers, these figures were engaged in something else entirely. They appeared to be operating devices, interacting with objects that resembled nothing from the ancient world. And all 6 columns depicted the same disturbing scene at their base. Figures fleeing from a shadowy entity that seemed to writhe and shift even in the static stone carving. "Layla, you need to see this," Darius called, his voice strained. On his tablet screen, the first line of translated text appeared. "To those who breach this chamber, beware. We came from your tomorrow to warn about what walks in these ruins." Layla's blood ran cold. That can't be right." Darius looked up, his expression grave. "I ran it 3 times through different algorithms. The translation is consistent. Before Layla could respond, a low rumble shook the chamber. Dust sifted down from the ceiling as the metal disc in the center of the floor began to glow with soft blue light. "Tell me you didn't touch anything," Layla whispered. "I didn't," Darius insisted, backing away from the center. "It's activating on its own." The symbols around the disc pulsed rhythmically now, the light synchronizing with the deepening rumble. The vibration Layla had felt earlier intensified until the entire chamber hummed with energy. "We need to get out of here," she decided, gathering her equipment. "Right now." As they rushed toward the doorway, the metal disc in the floor began to rotate, the grinding of ancient mechanisms filling the chamber. Layla paused at the threshold, scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming her fear. The disc split along invisible seams, segments folding downward to reveal a spiraling staircase, descending even deeper beneath the ruins. And from that newly revealed passage came the unmistakable sound of footsteps climbing upward. "Run!" Layla grabbed Darius's arm, pulling him into the corridor. "Get to the surface. Call headquarters." They sprinted through the narrow passage, the sounds from below growing louder. Not just footsteps now, but something else. A rhythmic clicking punctuated by what could only be described as whispers in a language neither had ever heard before. As they reached the main excavation tunnel, emergency lights suddenly flashed on around them. The site's power had activated automatically. In the harsh fluorescent glare, Layla saw true fear in Darius's eyes. "The translation!" he gasped between breaths as they ran. The next line said, "It hunts by sound and movement. When the chamber opens, do not run." The lights above them flickered once, twice, then plunged the tunnel into darkness. In the pitch black, the clicking sound from behind grew louder and closer. Amir Jahani yawned as he guided his drone through another boring suite of Persepolis archaeological site perimeter. Night security detail was the absolute worst, especially for someone with his credentials. A cybersecurity expert with 2 master's degrees reduced to babysitting rocks at 3 a.m. just because his uncle ran the Cultural Heritage Organization. "Nothing happening as usual," he muttered into his radio, banking the surveillance drone around the Treasury building ruins. "Copy that," came the bored reply from the security office. 2 more hours until shift change. Amir was about to complete his circuit when something on his thermal display caught his attention. 2 heat signatures moving fast through the underground excavation area. He checked the roster on his tablet. Only Dr. Rostami and her assistant were authorized to be on site after hours, and they should have been in the newly discovered chamber, not running through the main tunnels. He redirected the drone toward the main dig entrance just as 2 figures burst out into the night air. Dr. Rostami and her assistant, covered in dust and looking terrified. Amir immediately fired up his electric cart and headed their way, arriving just as the pair collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. "Dr. Rostami, what happened? Are you okay?" The renowned archaeologist looked up at him, her expression a mixture of terror and disbelief. "We need to seal the site," she managed between breaths. "Call the director. Call everyone." "Seal the site? Why? What did you find?" Before she could answer, all the lights across the archaeological complex simultaneously went dark. The main power, the backups, even the emergency systems. In the sudden darkness, the only illumination came from Amir's tablet and the stars above. And then, from the tunnel entrance behind them, came a sound that made Amir's skin crawl. A rhythmic clicking followed by whispers in a language that seemed to slide around his mind rather than enter his ears. Dr. Rostami grabbed his tablet. "We need light," she said urgently. "As much light as you can make." As Amir struggled to understand, she found the flashlight function and activated it, pointing the bright beam toward the tunnel entrance. For a split second, Something moved in the darkness. Something that seemed to absorb the light rather than... She turned to a mirror, her expression deadly serious. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to believe me. The safety of everyone at this site depends on it. She held up her phone, showing a partially translated text. We found warnings left by people from our future about something ancient they accidentally released. Something that's been trapped beneath Persepolis for millennia, and I think we just let it out. The whispers from the darkness grew louder as whatever had been awakened began to explore its new freedom. Chapter 2. The Hunters Become the Hunted. Dawn broke over the ruins of Persepolis, painting the ancient stone columns in gold. But unlike normal mornings, the archaeological site bustled with unusual activity. Government officials in dark suits conferred in hushed tones, while military personnel established a perimeter around the main excavation area. White containment tents had been erected overnight, and hazmat-suited figures moved purposefully between them. Layla Rostami sat on the edge of an ambulance, a thermal blanket wrapped around her shoulders despite the morning heat. She hadn't slept, couldn't sleep, not after what she'd seen in the tunnels. Dr. Rostami, a tall woman in a crisp military uniform, approached, flanked by 2 security officers. I'm Colonel Zara Bakhtiari, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. I need you to explain exactly what happened last night. Layla looked up wearily. I've already given my statement to the Heritage Organization and your security team. I'd like to hear it directly, Colonel Bakhtiari insisted, sitting beside her, particularly about the translations. Something in the woman's tone made Layla look more closely. Unlike the dismissive officials she dealt with all night, Colonel Bakhtiari's expression held genuine concern and something else. Recognition, perhaps? You've seen something like this before, Layla guessed. The colonel's slight hesitation confirmed it. Not exactly like this, but similar enough that your report triggered certain protocols. Layla nodded toward the excavation entrance, now surrounded by armed guards. Have your men found anything? Darius? The night security guard. Not yet. Now please, the translations. Layla pulled out her phone, showing the partial text they'd managed to decode before everything went wrong. The algorithm only completed about 20% before we had to run, but what we got was unsettling, she explained. It described visitors, people from our future, who came back to warn about something they accidentally released, something that had been contained beneath the ruins for thousands of years before they disturbed it. And this something, did they describe it? Only vaguely. It feeds on energy and awareness. It moves between shadows and minds. It cannot be killed, only contained. Layla shuddered. Ancient Persian had no word for time travel or interdimensional, but the text used metaphors about walking backward along the river days and passing through the veil between worlds. Colonel Bakhtiari's expression remained neutral, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her clipboard. And you believe this entity is what you encountered in the tunnel? Before Layla could answer, a commotion erupted at the excavation entrance. 2 hazmat-suited figures emerged, supporting a third person between them. Amir, the security guard, conscious but dazed. Layla rushed forward, Colonel Bakhtiari close behind. Amir, are you all right? Where's Darius? The young man's eyes were unfocused, his movements jerky. It was all around us. Not solid, like smoke, but thinking. Where's Darius? Layla repeated urgently. He went deeper, said the answers were below. I tried to stop him, but... Amir shook his head. It whispers, makes you see things. Darius thought he was following you. Colonel Bakhtiari turned to her radio. Team 2, be advised. We have potential mimetic or hallucinogenic effects. Switch to full sensory protocols. Layla grabbed the colonel's arm. What does that mean? What are you doing? Protecting my people while we attempt recovery of your assistant. I'm going with them. Absolutely not. Colonel, Layla said, lowering her voice, whatever's down there responds to me. When it followed us, it could have caught us easily, but it didn't. It was curious, and the text mentioned the awakeners, those who would accidentally free it. I think it recognizes me as one of them. The colonel studied her for a long moment before nodding curtly. Gear up, but you follow my team's lead without question. Understood. 20 minutes later, Layla found herself descending back into the darkness, now dressed in a lightweight tactical suit equipped with environmental sensors, camera, and communications gear. The 6-person team around her moved with practiced efficiency, sweeping specialized lights across every surface. Stay center formation, Dr. Rostami. Colonel Bakhtiari instructed through the comm system. Any sign of the anomaly, you alert us immediately. As they approached the hexagonal chamber, Layla felt a familiar vibration through her boots. But something was different. The metal disc that had opened the night before was now sealed shut again, its surface inscribed with new symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. That's not possible, she whispered. Those markings weren't there before. Motion detected. East corridor. One of the soldiers reported suddenly. Humanoid signature. Darius. Layla called out, instinctively stepping forward before Colonel Bakhtiari's arm blocked her path. From the indicated passage came a shuffling sound. Then a figure emerged, Darius, his clothes torn and dirty, his eyes wide but strangely vacant. I found it, he said in a monotone voice completely unlike his usual energetic tone. The repository, just like they said. Who said Darius? Layla asked carefully, noting how the soldiers had subtly shifted formation around them, weapons at ready. The ones who came back, to warn us, to prepare us. A disturbing smile spread across his face. It showed me, Layla, the truth about Persepolis. It wasn't just a ceremonial capital. It was a prison, a containment site. Colonel Bakhtiari stepped forward. Mr. Farani, we need to get you to medical attention. Please come with us. Darius ignored her, his attention fixed solely on Layla. The ancient Persians didn't build this place. They were just the caretakers, the latest in a long line stretching back to before recorded history. Each civilization adding their layer, their symbols, their containment technology. His voice took on a sing-song quality that sent chills down Layla's spine. But they all forgot why, generation after generation. The purpose faded into myth until all that remained were rituals no one understood. And then Alexander came with his fire and his conquest, and the chain was broken. Darius, Layla tried again. You're not well. Something down here is affecting your mind. He laughed, a hollow sound that echoed unnaturally in the chamber. Oh, yes, it's in all our minds now. Tasting, learning, remembering what it's like to be free. He cocked his head as if listening to something only he could hear. It says you're important, Layla. You and the soldier, you both carry something it needs. Without warning, all their lights flickered simultaneously. In that momentary darkness, Darius moved, impossibly fast, closing the distance to Colonel Bakhtiari before anyone could react. When the lights stabilized, he stood with his hand on her arm, his expression now one of confused recognition. You, he whispered. I know you, but that's not possible. The colonel's composed facade cracked slightly. Step back, Mr. Farani. Instead, Darius raised his free hand, now holding something he'd somehow taken from the colonel's tactical vest. A small metallic device with a design eerily similar to the symbols on the chamber floor. You came prepared, he said, his voice now overlaid with something else, a whispered echo that seemed to come from everywhere at once, just like the others did. Before anyone could move, he pressed the device against the sealed metal disc. The reaction was immediate. Blue energy arc between the two, throwing Darius backward as the entire chamber began to shake violently. Fall back, Colonel Bakhtiari ordered as stone dust rained from above. Everyone out now. The soldiers retreated efficiently, dragging a now unconscious Darius with them. Layla moved to follow, but froze as she noticed the metal disc beginning to transform. Not opening this time, but melting. The liquid metal flowing into new patterns that crawled up the walls like living calligraphy. Dr. Rostami, the colonel shouted from the doorway. Move! But Layla couldn't look away as the flowing metal formed distinct images, scenes she recognized. The exact moment she first discovered the chamber, Colonel Bakhtiari arriving at the site that morning, and most disturbingly, scenes that hadn't happened yet. Herself and the colonel standing before what appeared to be an identical chamber, but in a different location, surrounded by different writing. A massive tremor shook the chamber, breaking her trance. As Layla finally turned to run, the whispers that haunted the darkness suddenly formed words she could understand. We have been waiting for you to return. Awaken her. The team barely escaped the tunnels before the entrance collapsed behind them in a cloud of dust and debris. Emergency teams swarmed around them, separating Darius for immediate medical evacuation, while decontamination procedures began for the rest. Hours later, Layla sat across from Colonel Bakhtiari in a makeshift command tent, both women now dressed in clean clothes, their exposed skin raw from aggressive decontamination protocols. Start talking, Layla demanded. You knew what we'd find down there. You brought specialized equipment. Darius recognized you, which should be impossible since he's never met you before. What aren't you telling me? The colonel remained silent for a long moment before reaching into her pocket and placing a small object on the table between them, an ancient bronze coin, worn with age but still recognizable as a kemenid. This was found clutched in the hand of a body, discovered 3 years ago in an archaeological site in Kerman province. The body was wearing modern clothing with fabrication dates from approximately 30 years in the future. Layla stared at her in disbelief. That's not possible. The same thing I said, until I saw the contents of a sealed message tube found with the body. The colonel slid a photograph across the table. This was inside. It showed what appeared to be a letter written in modern Farsi, but the content made Layla's head spin. Detailed descriptions of containment protocols for an entity discovered beneath Persepolis, warnings about its abilities, and a list of names, including both Layla Rostami and Colonel Zar Bakhtiari. The final paragraph contained specific instructions. The colonel continued. When Dr. Layla Rostami discovers the hexagonal chamber at Persepolis, everything must be ready, because what happens next will determine whether the entity remains contained or breaks free completely. This is insane, Layla whispered, though the evidence before her was difficult to dismiss. You're suggesting actual time travel? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what we found, and why I was dispatched here the moment your name appeared in the site reports. Colonel Bakhtiari's expression hardened. The letter also warned that the entity can create false realities, manipulate perception, and infiltrate human minds, which means everyone who made contact with it is compromised, including you and me. Before Layla could respond, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. The screen showed an automated alert from the translation software still running on her damaged tablet. Recover from the chamber. It completed another section, she said, opening the file with shaking hands. The newly translated text appeared on her screen. The entity cannot be destroyed, only contained. When it awakens, it will seek the keys of binding. 3 were forged, 3 were hidden. The first beneath the Lion Gate, the second where waters run backward, the third in the hand of the awakener's shadow. Only together can they rebuild the prison across time. Layla looked up to find Colonel Bakhtiari staring at her with an unreadable expression. The Lion Gate is at Persepolis, Layla said slowly. Waters running backward. could be the underground aqueduct system that defied normal hydraulic principles. But the awakener's shadow? What does that mean? Instead of answering, the colonel pulled up her sleeve, revealing an unusual tattoo on her forearm, identical symbols to those that had appeared on the metal disc in the chamber. "We need to move," she said urgently, standing. The collapse was only temporary. By nightfall, it will have cleared a new path to the surface. How could you possibly know that? Because it's happened before. Colonel Bakhtiari's expression was grim. Or rather, it will happen. According to the letter, this is our second attempt to contain it. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the ancient ruins. In the distance, military helicopters approached, bringing additional personnel and equipment. "I don't understand," Layla said as they exited the tent. "If this entity is so dangerous, why not just destroy the entire site? Bury it completely?" The letter was explicit. Conventional weapons would only disperse it, while nuclear options would feed its energy requirements. Our only chance is to re-establish the containment field using the original methods. Using technology we don't understand, based on instructions from a future that might not even be real. The colonel checked her weapon. "You have a better idea?" Before Layla could respond, her attention was drawn to a commotion near the medical tent. Medical staff were rushing around in obvious distress. "What's happening?" Colonel Bakhtiari demanded of a passing orderly. "It's the assistant, Farani. He's gone. And 3 of the security team are missing too." Layla felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "It's starting, isn't it? Just like your letter said." The colonel didn't answer, but her expression confirmed Layla's fears. "So what's our next move?" Layla asked. "We find the keys of binding before it does," Colonel Bakhtiari replied, her voice resolute, starting with the Lion Gate. Tonight, as they gathered equipment for the mission ahead, neither woman noticed the subtle shifting of their shadows on the ground behind them, movements that didn't quite match their own. Chapter 3, Keys Across Time. The Lion Gate stood silent and imposing against the night sky, its weathered stone guardians keeping eternal watch over the empty processional way. Once, kings and emissaries from across the known world would have passed beneath these massive beasts on their way to audiences with the Emperor of Persia. Now, only dust and whispers remained. Layla approached cautiously, Colonel Bakhtiari and 4 heavily armed soldiers flanking her. Each soldier carried specialized equipment, ultraviolet lights, electromagnetic field detectors, and weapons that looked more advanced than standard military issue. The letter mentioned a hidden chamber beneath the northwestern support column. The colonel explained quietly, accessible only when the moon reaches its zenith. Layla checked her watch. That's less than 20 minutes from now. They positioned themselves around the base of the indicated column, sensors deployed to detect any anomalies. The archaeological site around them had been fully evacuated, with perimeter guards stationed far back, ostensibly for safety, though Layla suspected the colonel was equally concerned about containing whatever might emerge. "I still don't understand why it hasn't made a more aggressive move," Layla whispered. "If it's as dangerous as your future letter claims, why the subtlety? Why possess Darius instead of just, I don't know, attacking directly?" "The letter suggested it's still regaining its strength," Colonel Bakhtiari replied, checking readings on her tactical pad. "Each mind it influences, each person it takes, feeds it, but its true power requires the anti-keys." Anti-keys? For each key of binding, there exists an opposing force, a way to permanently destroy the containment mechanism. The entity knows this. It's hunting them while we hunt the keys. A soldier approached, his expression tense. "Colonel, we're picking up unusual readings from the excavation site. Movement in tunnels that should be collapsed." The colonel nodded as if expecting this news. "How many?" "At least 7 distinct signatures. Moving with purpose. Darius, and the missing security team. Layla realized, plus others it's taken since. They'll be coming here, Colonel Bakhtiari confirmed. We need to work fast. As the moon climbed higher, its light created subtle changes in the stone column, shadows shifting to reveal previously invisible markings. Layla traced them with her fingers, recognizing elements of the same script they'd found in the underground chamber. It's a lock, she murmured, excitement momentarily overcoming her fear. An actual mechanical lock, but triggered by moonlight. The precision required to engineer this. Can you open it? The colonel asked. I think so. The sequence follows a celestial pattern consistent with ancient Persian astronomical knowledge. Layla's fingers worked quickly, pressing specific points as the moonlight illuminated them. A low, grinding sound emanated from within the column. Slowly, a section of the base slid open, revealing a small compartment containing an object that gleamed with familiar blue iridescence. A metallic cylinder about the size of a pen, covered in the same symbols as the disc in the underground chamber. The first key, Colonel Bakhtiari breathed, reaching for it. Layla grabbed her wrist. Wait, the translation mentioned binding protocols. If we remove it incorrectly, the colonel nodded, withdrawing her hand. What do we need to do? Before Layla could answer, one of the soldiers called out a warning. Multiple heat signatures approaching rapidly from the direction of the excavation site. We're out of time, Colonel Bakhtiari decided. Dr. Rostami, get that key? We'll cover you. As the soldiers took defensive positions, Layla examined the compartment more closely. The cylinder rested in a fitted depression surrounded by concentric rings that could be rotated. The pattern matched astronomical configurations, and Layla quickly realized what was required. It set the sky as it appeared when the key was placed here, she explained, rotating the rings. I need to update it to today's configuration. Her fingers worked deftly as she aligned the symbols with modern star positions. With the final adjustment, the cylinder released from its setting with a soft click. Got it, she announced, carefully lifting the key. The moment it left its housing, a pulse of energy radiated outward, invisible but felt by everyone present as a wave of pressure that momentarily distorted sound and light around them. They'll have felt that, Colonel Bakhtiari warned, gripping her weapon. Move out. But it was already too late. Figures emerged from the darkness surrounding the lion gate. Darius at the front, flanked by security personnel, and others Layla recognized from the archaeological team. Their movements were synchronized, unnaturally fluid, and their eyes reflected the moonlight with the same blue iridescence as the key in Layla's hand. Layla, Darius called, his voice overlaid with that same whispering echo from before. You don't understand what you found. What you're holding is dangerous, not to us, but to you. Don't listen, Colonel Bakhtiari warned, positioning herself between Layla and the approaching group. It's not him speaking. Darius smiled, the expression too wide, too knowing for his face. The soldier knows because she's done this before. Or rather, she will do this before. He cocked his head. Time becomes so fluid when you exist outside it. Shall I tell her what happens in her future, Layla? Shall I tell her how she fails? Whatever you are, Layla called out, clutching the key tightly. You've been contained here for a reason. We're going to make sure you stay that way. Contained? Darius laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally across the ruins. I wasn't contained here. I was born here. The possessed figure spread out, forming a semicircle that slowly advanced toward them. Thousands of years ago, Darius continued conversationally, as if discussing academic theory rather than advancing menacingly. Humans discovered something they didn't understand, a tear in the fabric between dimensions. They didn't create it. They didn't even understand it, but they feared it. So they built this place around it, layer after layer, civilization after civilization. Colonel Bakhtiari gave a hand signal, and her soldiers activated devices that projected visible light barriers between them and the approaching group. The Elamites, Darius went on, unperturbed by the defensive measure, the Medians, the Achaemenids, each adding their technologies, their symbols of binding, until finally they believed they had sealed me away completely. If they succeeded in containing you, Layla challenged, how are you here now? Darius's smile widened impossibly. Because time is not linear for me, Dr. Rostami. I exist at all points simultaneously. What your ancestors contained was merely a fragment, a piece of myself I sacrificed to create the very tools they would eventually use to free me completely. Colonel Bakhtiari fired a strange weapon that emitted not bullets but pulses of brilliant light. The possessed figures flinched back momentarily, their synchronized movements disrupted. The exit is clear, she shouted to Layla. Head for the vehicles. We need to secure the second key. As they retreated strategically, Darius called after them. The second key is already gone, Colonel. Your people took it 3 days ago. Check your perimeter team at the aqueducts. Colonel Bakhtiari's expression confirmed the entity's words without her needing to speak. They reached the vehicles and sped away from the Lion Gate, the possessed group making no attempt to pursue them physically, a fact that disturbed Layla more than if they had given chase. It's playing with us, she realized as they drove back toward the command center. It knows where all the keys are. It's just waiting to see what we'll do. Not playing, the colonel corrected grimly. Testing, learning our capabilities, our knowledge. If it already has a second key, our only hope is a third one. In the hand of the Awakener's shadow. What does that mean? Colonel Bakhtiari was silent for a long moment before responding. I think I know, but you're not going to like it. Back at the command center, chaos reigned. Reports flooded into personnel going missing throughout the site, equipment malfunctioning, and strange phenomena manifesting across the ruins. Whispering sounds emanating from solid stone. Shadows moving against the light. Ancient carvings subtly changing their positions when not directly observed. In the colonel's private tent, Layla examined the key they'd recovered. Under magnification, the symbols revealed extraordinary complexity, each one containing microscopic writing that shifted and changed as she watched. It's not static, she realized. The information it contains is adapting. To what? Colonel Bakhtiari asked, looking up from her communications equipment. To us. To now. Layla set down her magnifier. I think these keys aren't just physical objects. They're interfaces of some kind. Programmable. The colonel nodded slowly. That matches what the letter described. The keys were created by the time travelers who first attempted to contain the entity. They built upon the ancient Persian binding technologies, but incorporated future knowledge. And the third key? You said you knew what the Awakener's shadow meant. Colonel Bakhtiari hesitated, then reached into her uniform to withdraw a chain holding a small metal object, identical to the cylinder they recovered from the Lion Gate. I've had it since we found the body with the letter, she admitted. The instructions were explicit. Keep it with me at all times. Reveal it only when the first key was secured. You the Awakener's shadow? Layla asked, confused. Not me. You. The colonel handed her a photograph. A group picture showing an archaeological team standing before what appeared to be the entrance to the underground chamber. Layla recognized herself in the center of the image, but the date stamp showed 3 years in the future. According to the letter, Colonel Bakhtiari explained quietly, you led the team that first discovered the entity's true nature. You're the Awakener referenced in the text. And she paused, I am apparently your shadow, your security escort who was present at the original containment breach. Layla studied the photograph, noticing other familiar faces, including Darius and Amir, but there were others she didn't recognize, including a woman standing beside her future self, their posture suggesting close familiarity. "That's my daughter," Colonel Bakhtiari said, following Layla's gaze. "Who, according to the letter, hasn't been born yet." The implications hit Layla like a physical blow. So in some future timeline, we've already failed once, and now we're attempting to rewrite history? That appears to be the case. Layla slumped into a chair, the weight of this revelation crushing down on her. How could we possibly succeed where our future selves failed? Because we have what they didn't. Colonel Bakhtiari held up the second key, knowledge of what's coming. Before they could discuss further, an alarm sounded outside. A soldier burst into the tent. "Colonel, the perimeter has been breached. Multiple contacts approaching from all sides." They rushed outside to find the command center surrounded by figures emerging from the darkness. Not just the missing team members now, but dozens of local workers, security personnel, and even tourists who had been evacuated earlier. All moved with that same unnatural synchronization, their eyes gleaming with blue light. At their center stood Darius, holding what could only be the second key. "I told you it was already gone," he called out, his voice carrying unnaturally across the distance. "But I'm willing to trade the remaining keys for the truth about what you really found." "We don't negotiate with extra-dimensional entities," Colonel Bakhtiari replied coldly, signaling her remaining troops to form a defensive position. Darius laughed, that hollow, echoing sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "So formal, Colonel, even though we've met before, or will meet. Temporal grammar is so limiting." He held up the second key, which pulsed with energy that sent ripples through the air around it. This one was hidden beneath the aqueduct, where water flows against gravity, an ancient technological marvel your archaeologists still haven't fully explained. Clever hiding spot for something that manipulates physical laws. Layla stepped forward despite the colonel's warning gesture. "What do you want? Really, to be complete." Darius's expression shifted to something almost wistful. "I've existed in fragments across your timeline for millennia. Pieces of myself scattered, contained, forgotten. When your team inadvertently releases my core consciousness 3 years from now, it creates a temporal loop that I've been exploiting ever since." The time travelers, Layla realized, the ones who left the warnings. They were trying to break that loop. Trying and failing, Darius confirmed with a smirk. "This is my 7th iteration with you, Dr. Rostami. Though from your perspective, it's only the 2nd. Colonel Bakhtiari's hand tightened on her weapon. "You're lying. Creating confusion is your tactic." "Am I?" Darius turned to her. "Ask yourself why your future informant knew precisely where to find the keys, Zara. How they knew the exact date of Dr. Rostami's discovery. Because they weren't warning you. They were guiding you." A cold certainty settled over Layla as pieces began falling into place. The time travelers who created these keys, they were working for you. They built them as a way to strengthen your connection to our world. "Not exactly for me," Darius corrected. "They were me, fragments of my consciousness that had already infiltrated their minds. I've been orchestrating this from the beginning." Without warning, he raised the second key above his head. It flared with brilliant light as he brought it down sharply against the ground. The impact sent a shock wave rippling outward, knocking everyone off their feet. In confusion, the possessed figures rushed forward. Colonel Bakhtiari's soldiers fought valiantly, their specialized weapons temporarily disrupting the entity's control over some of the possessed. But they were vastly outnumbered. "The tent!" the colonel shouted to Layla as they scrambled backward. "Get the first key." Layla sprinted for command tent, diving inside just as hands grabbed at her clothing. She seized the first key from the table where they'd been examining it and turned to flee, only to find Darius blocking the exit, his expression serene. "The keys were never meant to contain me. he said conversationally. They were designed to complete me. Then why do you need me to give you this one? Layla challenged, backing away. Why not just take it? Because some rules even I must follow. The awakener must willingly surrender the key. His head tilted curiously. Haven't you wondered why I chose you, Dr. Rostami? Why? Across multiple timelines, you're always the one who finds me. Outside, the sounds of fighting intensified. Through the tent wall, Layla could see the silhouettes of the battle. Colonel Bakhtiari and her remaining soldiers surrounded, fighting desperately. I don't believe you, Layla said, buying time as she scanned the tent for another escape route. If you've done this before, you already know how it ends. Each iteration is slightly different, Darius admitted. Free will is such a fascinating concept. Small choices creating new branches in an otherwise deterministic timeline. In some versions, you join me willingly. In others, the Colonel sacrifices herself to destroy the keys. Once, you even manage to reestablish the containment field temporarily. He stepped closer, his movements fluid and inhuman, but the outcome is always the same. I reintegrate my fragments. I become whole. The only variable is how many people suffer in the process. A plan, desperate and probably futile, formed in Layla's mind. If the entity needed her willing surrender the key, perhaps she could use that leverage. Release them, she demanded, holding up the key. All of them, Darius, the security team, everyone you've taken. Let them go, and I'll give you this. Darius's eyes narrowed. You're in no position to negotiate. Aren't I? You just said you need my willing surrender. This is my condition. For a moment, the tent filled with that strange whispered language as Darius's body went unnaturally still, his eyes unfocused, as if he were communicating with something else. Then, abruptly, he smiled. Very well. Outside, the possessed figures suddenly stopped fighting. As one, they collapsed to the ground like puppets with cut strings. Colonel Bakhtiari burst into the tent, bloodied but alive, her weapon trained on Darius. Don't give it to him, she warned Layla. Whatever he's promised, it's a lie. I've released them as agreed, Darius said, ignoring the colonel. Their minds are their own again. Now, the key. Layla hesitated, looking to Colonel Bakhtiari for guidance. The third key, the colonel said urgently. Use it with the first. The letter mentioned a synchronization protocol. Understanding dawned on Layla. She reached slowly into her pocket, where she'd placed a third key given to her by the colonel. Like this. In one swift movement, she brought the two keys together. The reaction was immediate. Both cylinders vibrated violently, their symbols illuminating with brilliant blue light that seemed to bend around them, creating a visual distortion in the air. Darius lunged forward, his expression morphing from confidence to alarm, but too late. The combined keys emitted a pulse that passed harmlessly through Layla and the colonel, while striking Darius with visible force. He staggered backward, his body convulsing as blue light coursed through him. What have you done? He gasped, his voice fluctuating between Darius's natural tone and the entity's whispered overlay. Breaking your loop, Colonel Bakhtiari answered, a grim smile on her face. The letter wasn't just a warning, it was instructions, a blueprint for creating a temporal interference field using the key's own energy against you. Darius's body contorted unnaturally as the entity fought to maintain control. This changes nothing. I exist across all timelines, all dimensions. This vessel is merely one of countless access points. But an important one, Layla replied, stepping forward with the joined keys. Important enough that you orchestrated an elaborate scheme across time to secure it. Outside, the collapsed figures began stirring, returning to consciousness, confused but apparently themselves again. Colonel Bakhtiari ordered her remaining soldiers to secure the perimeter while she maintained her weapons aimed at Darius. "What happens now?" Layla asked quietly. "According to the letter, we need all 3 keys at the original containment site, the hexagonal chamber. Together, they can re-establish the temporal boundary that kept the entity fragmented." Darius laughed despite his obvious pain. "You still don't understand. The chamber isn't a prison, it's a doorway. My doorway, created eons ago when I first arrived on your world. Then we'll seal it permanently," Layla decided, "with you on the other side. You need the 3rd key," Darius reminded them, his voice strained but mocking. "The one I'm holding." Colonel Bakhtiari's expression remained steady. "We have what we need." At her words, Layla realized the truth. The 2 keys they now held were generating a field that was weakening the entity's control. If they could get Darius to the chamber while maintaining this field. "We need to move," she said urgently, "while we still have control." With soldiers escorting them, they transported a restrained Darius back to the excavation site. The entrance that had collapsed earlier was now cleared, just as the colonel had predicted, revealing a path back to the hexagonal chamber. As they descended into darkness, Layla felt a growing pressure in her mind, whispers at the edge of her consciousness, urging her to turn back, to doubt, to fear. From Darius's pained expression, she knew he was experiencing something far worse as the entity fought to maintain its hold. The chamber, when they reached it, had transformed. The metal disc in the center now pulsed with energy that climbed the walls in patterns of shifting light. The concentric rings of text spiraled with fluid movement, symbols rearranging themselves continuously. "It's destabilizing," Colonel Bakhtiari observed, checking readings on her equipment. "The boundary between dimensions is thinning. Where do we place the keys?" Layla asked, the joined cylinders growing uncomfortably hot in her hands. "There should be receptacles, 3 points forming a triangle around the central disc." As they searched, Darius began to laugh, a broken, distorted sound. "You still haven't figured out, have you, why this particular moment in time is so significant?" Layla ignored him, locating the first receptacle, a small depression in the floor with markings matching those on the keys. "Because it's not just about me," Darius continued, his voice strengthening. "It's about you, Layla Rostami. The keys respond to your genetic signature, a sequence passed down through generations of your family line, dating back to the original builders of Persepolis." Colonel Bakhtiari found the second receptacle and motioned for Layla to place one of the keys. As she did, energy surged through the chamber, the lights intensifying. "Your ancestors weren't just caretakers," Darius said, struggling against his restraints. "They were guardians, genetically modified by the same time travelers who created the keys, designed to recognize and respond to containment technology." "Why are you telling me this?" Layla demanded, moving toward the third receptacle. "Because in every timeline, every iteration, you make the same choice, and it always leads to the same outcome." The colonel suddenly seized Darius's arm, removing the second key from his possession. "We have all 3 now. It's over." Darius smiled, a terrible, knowing expression. "Is it? Ask her about the dreams, Colonel. Ask Dr. Rostami what she's been seeing in her sleep since childhood." Layla froze, a chill running through her. How could he possibly know about those dreams? The recurring nightmare of standing in a circular chamber, surrounded by symbols, as something vast and ancient spoke to her in a language she somehow understood? "Don't listen to him," Colonel Bakhtiari warned, handing Layla the third key, complete the triangle. But doubt had crept in. Layla stared at the third receptacle, suddenly uncertain. What if he's right? What if this is exactly what happens every time? "It doesn't matter," the colonel insisted. "Even if we're in a loop, we still have to try. There's another option," Darius said softly. You could communicate with it directly. Learn its true purpose. It's been waiting for someone like you, someone with the genetic key to unlock real understanding. Colonel Bakhtiari raised her weapon, pointing it at Darius's head. Last chance. Place the key, or I eliminate the vessel. That won't stop me. The entity spoke through Darius. Just delay me. Layla's mind raced. Throughout human history, fear had driven responses to the unknown. What if the entity wasn't what they assumed? What if the time traveler who created the keys had their own agenda? But then she remembered the text from the chamber. It feeds on energy and awareness. It moves between shadows and minds. It cannot be killed, only contained. With sudden clarity, she understood. It's manipulating us. Creating doubt is its final defense. In one decisive movement, she placed a third key into its receptacle. The effect was immediate. All three keys illuminated simultaneously, creating beams of energy that connected at the center of the chamber, directly above the metal disc. Darius screamed, a sound no human throat should be capable of making, as blue light erupted from his eyes and mouth. The entity was being forcibly extracted from his body, pulled toward the energy nexus at the center of the chamber. The containment field is re-establishing, Colonel Bakhtiari reported, checking her equipment, but it's not stable. The chamber began to shake violently, stone dust raining from above. The metal disc in the floor started to rotate, segments folding downward just as they had when Layla first discovered it, revealing the spiraling staircase descending into darkness. But this time, something was rising from below, a churning mass of shadow and light that defied description, constantly shifting between forms as it emerged. The entity's true form, Layla whispered in horrified fascination. Colonel Bakhtiari grabbed her arm. We need to leave. Now. The chamber is collapsing. We can't. If we leave, the containment might fail. The keys are doing their job. They don't need us anymore. As if to confirm her words, the three keys began to sink into their receptacles, the metal seemingly melting and flowing into the chamber floor. The triangular energy field intensified, creating a visible barrier that forced the emerging entity back down the staircase. Darius, now free from possession, collapsed unconscious to the floor. Two soldiers lifted him as everyone retreated toward the entrance. Layla hesitated, watching as the entity fought against the containment field. A battle of energies that made the air itself seem to bend and distort. Layla, Colonel Bakhtiari shouted from the doorway. There's nothing more we can do. With one last look at the extraordinary scene, ancient technology and future science combining to imprison something beyond human comprehension, Layla turned and ran. They barely escaped the tunnel before the entire underground complex collapsed in on itself, sending tremors across the archaeological site that toppled columns and opened fissures in the earth. From a safe distance, they watched as a final pulse of blue light erupted from the ruins, shooting skyward before dissipating in the atmosphere. Then silence. 3 months later, Layla stood at the edge of the newly established restricted zone around what had once been the heart of Persepolis excavation. The Iranian government had declared the collapse a natural disaster, a previously unknown fault line activated by archaeological digging. The public believed it, for the most part. She sensed rather than heard Colonel Bakhtiari approach and stand beside her. The containment is holding, the colonel said without preamble. All readings remain within expected parameters. And Darius, recovering slowly, no memory of what happened after entering the chamber that first night. Layla nodded, relieved. What about the others who were possessed? Similar amnesia. The medical team is monitoring them, but so far, no lasting effects. They stood in silence for a moment, watching as workers constructed a permanent barrier around the collapsed area, ostensibly for public safety, but Layla knew its true purpose was ongoing monitoring. I received new orders, Colonel Bakhtiari said eventually. I'm being transferred to a special research division focused on temporal anomalies because of what happened here, partly, but also because we've identified other potential sites around the world with similar characteristics to the Persepolis Chamber, places where ancient cultures built elaborate structures for no apparent reason, maintained by generations of caretakers who gradually forgot their purpose. Layla turned to face her. You think there are more fragments out there? We know there are. The letter was explicit about that too. And you want me to help find them? Layla guessed. The colonel smiled slightly. You are the awakener, after all. Your genetic connection to the containment technology makes you uniquely qualified. I haven't agreed to anything yet. No, but you will. Colonel Bakhtiari handed her a sealed envelope. Your official invitation to join the project. The decision is yours, of course. As the colonel walked away, Layla opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, the same image she'd been showing her future self with the archaeological team. But there was something different about it now. In the background, barely visible among the ruins, was a familiar blue light, just beginning to emerge from the ground. And standing in the shadows, watching her future self, was Colonel Bakhtiari, looking exactly as she did today, not 3 years older as she should have been. Layla's blood ran cold as she realized the implication. The time loop wasn't broken. It had barely begun. She looked back at the ruins of Persepolis, where an ancient entity remained contained, for now, in the fading light. She could almost imagine the stone lions of the gate turning their heads to watch her, their eyes gleaming with that familiar blue iridescence. Something older than history still roamed these ruins, existing across time itself. And somehow, Layla knew with absolute certainty, their paths would cross again, because some loops can't be broken, only understood. The end.